Hello everybody, it's Chris Clark with discoff.law. Today's video is about the exciting topic of jurisdiction. Our question today comes to us from Paul Linden. Paul was asking about Prodigy's lawsuit against Gannon Buhr. He asked, did I hear correctly that the lawsuit was filed in the federal court but then tried according to Georgia law? If so, is federal jurisdiction involved since each party comes from different states? So there's a couple good questions packed in there. Before we answer them, we also got a lot of questions about the jurisdictional issues in Natalie Ryan's lawsuit against the Disc Golf Pro Tour and the PDGA. For example, several people asked us why Natalie chose to file her lawsuit in California and why was it filed in federal court there instead of state court. I'm going to try to explain in simple terms the difference between state courts and federal courts and how jurisdiction works. There are frequent court battles over this issue of jurisdiction because it is very confusing and can be very complex. A lot of important decisions are made in lawsuits based on the question of whether the court has jurisdiction over the parties or the subject matter of the lawsuit or not. So what does jurisdiction mean? Jurisdiction is the power to make legal decisions and judgments. If a court has jurisdiction over you, it can make legal decisions and judgments that affect you. If it doesn't, it can't. This is called personal jurisdiction. Right away, you can see why defendants like to argue that a court might not have jurisdiction over them. Without jurisdiction, the court can't make decisions affecting them. A court must also have what's called subject matter jurisdiction, meaning it has the power to make legal decisions and judgments relative to the type of case that is before it. This leads into the differences between state courts and federal courts. Most people who go to court go to state court. And that's because state courts have broad power to hear a wide range of cases. In most states, for example, state courts can hear civil lawsuits, family matters, including divorce and child custody, and criminal proceedings as well. State courts have jurisdiction over their own residents and businesses. But state courts can also sometimes have jurisdiction over non-residents if the non-resident has sufficient minimum contacts with the state and the lawsuit arises out of those contacts. Federal courts, on the other hand, have limited subject matter jurisdiction. Federal courts can only hear cases arising under the United States Constitution or federal law, or between citizens of different states. This is called diversity jurisdiction when there's a case involving citizens of different states. Diversity jurisdiction applies to cases involving multiple parties where all plaintiffs must be citizens of a different state than all defendants. So now let's get back to Paul's question. Yes, Paul, you heard correctly. Prodigy filed its lawsuit in federal court in Georgia. Prodigy is a Georgia corporation. It has its principal place of business in Georgia. So it is a citizen of Georgia for jurisdictional purposes. Gannon Buhr is a resident and citizen of Iowa. So yes, federal jurisdiction was involved since each party comes from a different state. Diversity jurisdiction is how this case ended up in federal court in Georgia. There was also a clause in Gannon's contract with Prodigy stating that, quote, the federal and state courts sitting in Woodstock, Georgia, USA, shall have proper and exclusive jurisdiction and venue with respect to any dispute arising from or related to the subject matter of this agreement. So what about Natalie Ryan's lawsuit? How did her case against the Disc Golf Pro Tour and the PDGA end up in federal court in California? Well, we would go through the same analysis. Natalie is a resident of Virginia. The PDGA is a Colorado nonprofit corporation headquartered in Georgia. LOA LLC, which is the limited liability company through which the Disc Golf Pro Tour operates, is a Texas LLC. And there was another defendant, some of you may remember, Thousand Rated Productions, the team that actually puts on the OTB Open in Stockton, California. Thousand Rated Productions LLC is a California limited liability company. So it appears that we have diversity jurisdiction here, which would allow this case that Natalie filed to be heard in federal court, because Natalie, the plaintiff, is a Virginia resident and the defendant companies are all located in different states. But as many of you know, there was a twist. Federal case law states that for the purposes of diversity jurisdiction, a limited liability company is a citizen of every state of which its members are citizens. And when we're talking about limited liability companies, the word member is just another term for owner. So it turns out that LOA LLC has at least one owner that resides in Virginia, the same state as Natalie. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals held that for this reason, the federal district court in California lacked jurisdiction over the Disc Golf Pro Tour. We got another question. David Weaver asked, do you think that this opens the door for Natalie to file for future temporary restraining orders in other states for upcoming Disc Golf Pro Tour and PDGA major events? The answer is yes. And we are aware that Natalie may have filed a second lawsuit, this time in Minnesota. And we look forward to bringing you our analysis on that very soon. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe.